Well, here in the United States, Germany probably has a reputation of a green leader. But from a historical perspective, I would argue that post-war Germany's path towards more sustainable practices and environmentally friendly legislation was a bumpy road with detours. Well into the 1960s, West German society was preoccupied with reconstruction after the war. Especially the cities had sustained major damage from the Allied bombing campaigns and needed to be rebuilt. So the construction of housing was a major post-war concern. As part of a larger European pattern, the West German economy recovered relatively quickly from the war, and West Germans experienced almost full employment and growing prosperity, which, among other things, translated into increasing consumption. So this is the time of the famous economic miracle. So the scarcity of the post-war years was over, and the West Germans adopted consumption patterns that resembled American patterns, right? So they now shopped in supermarkets, they had a fridge in the kitchen, a car in the garage, they took a summer vacation. And one of the symbols of a post-war recovery was surely the car. So individual car ownership increased significantly. And once you have so many cars, you of course need the related infrastructure like roads and parking lots and that sort of thing. So in short, for about 2 decades, the focus in West Germany lay on economic growth and recovery. However, around 1970, there's a noticeable shift as the environment enters the equation. There was some international impetus for this shift. 1970 is the first year when Earth Day was celebrated in the United States. In 1972, the Club of Rome issued its famous report, The Limits to Growth, that points to the environmental costs of this fixation on economic growth. And the same year, the United Nations hosted a conference on human environment in Stockholm. So I'm bringing up these examples to indicate that there's growing international attention to the environment, and the environment becomes a thing, if you will. Now, pair these international shifts with regional and local activism. In West Germany, local activism prominently coalesced around planned nuclear facilities. Over the course of the 1970s, West Germany developed a powerful anti-nuclear movement that really tried to hold political leaders accountable. And West Germany also developed the first measures at environmental protection, Umweltschutz. This becomes a major subject for policy. In the 1970s, we also see local and regional precursors to what would become the Green Party in the early 1980s. And although the roots of post-war environmentalism lie in the 1970s, I would probably call the 1980s the environmental decade. In the early 1980s, West Germans grew profoundly concerned about acid rain and forest dieback, right? The famous Waldsterben. That is again a pan-European issue, but the West Germans became particularly exercised about it. And it is during those years that environmental consciousness really went mainstream, that some major environmental laws were being passed, and that some sustainable habits entered everyday life. So civil society became a major environmental player, and here I mean NGOs, local initiatives, but also practices of alternative consumerism, demands for green technology, etc. So to answer your question, environmental concerns in West Germany grew from the 1970s forward and reached a first peak over the course of the 1980s.